It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. This week, starring special guest star Mr. Michael Lloyd.
Oh my gosh.
I know, people always go, hello, welcome to the big show.
I'm right in the midst of white man overbite.
It's every time people are first-timers on the show and they see the applause, we forgot to check that setting that lets the audio go through, so make sure everybody's getting audio.
I'll let you know.
Today. Everybody hear us? Yes, I think they do.
I see I see a little thing, gauge.
Yeah, that works, but then sometimes we have problems with the output. But it looks they'd be telling us in the chat room. So I want to say a quick hello to Lamar Franklin, Mark Kimberley, Dan Weber, Greg Vaughn, Bob Gunnerfeld, Lamont J, Catherine, Dean Turner, Linda Cullum.
That's a lot of people.
Adriana Lucette, Drew Richardson, anyway, Fantamalonis. Yeah, now when you say hi, Michael, it applies to both of us. And you guys should know.
John Lennon, Elvis Presley.
You know,
incredible. What a connection.
This show is so powerful, it brings them back from the dead.
It's unbelievable.
So, Michael and I have been friends now. Do you know that we actually met through our mutual friend in 1996?
Really?
Yep. 23 years?
Wow, I didn't think it was that long. It feels much longer.
David Kessel introduced us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he just called the other day and I haven't returned his phone call. So Kessel, if you're watching, I got to remember.
Hi, taxi people.
Yeah, I normally have the camera up there, so I'm still getting used to looking over there. Anyway, Michael and I have been friends for more than 20 years. He comes to the Road Rally every year. It's become a habit in a good way that he starts out the rally because he's very inspiring and
perspiring, perspiring.
More importantly, we always have him close out the road rally because he is a great observer of the human condition as it relates to musicians, and so he kind of gives a little. He's on the last panel with Shirelli and some other people every year, and then Michael gives a little, not an invocation, but what do you call that?
I don't know. Whenever you're leaving something, sometimes you want to take away something right at the end.
Right.
And everybody's got a dream, and the dream doesn't die just because they walk out of the room. So I want them to take away something that propels them, that keeps the dream alive, that keeps the dream going, because we're all dreaming. We're all in the same thing. We all need help. We all need ideas. We all need people to believe in us. And if I can even do that just a little tiny bit,
you do it a lot.
It's a great blessing to me. So
there are a lot of people that have accomplished stuff kind of in your ballpark of they've had a successful career, a real live professional successful career. And,
you mean there are others?
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Okay.
But and in a second I'm going to read your bio just for people who watch the show afterwards. But they're not givers. They don't give back like you do. And I've always been impressed by that. For those of you who don't know, and yes, I may be fawning a little bit, but when I was just starting out in the industry, I used to get a magazine called Recording Engineer Producer Magazine and Pro Sound News, and I would read these things, literally every word, cover to cover. And I remember seeing an interview with Michael one time, and I remember just staring at it and rereading it and think, God, what I wouldn't give to have an hour with this dude. And now we're close friends, and
I think I can write down a number that you can give.
And he's kind of like my friend Ralph Murphy in that his stories go back so long, but even though they go back in time so long, the relevance is still there. You're able to draw on this very deep well of experience.
But it's always the same. It's the same, not just the music business guys. It's the same with making a couch. I'm looking at a couch, or this table that Michael has. The thing that's important is you hope and you dream and you're trying and you're working. And if someone can help you, or someone can give you an idea or a little inspiration, I know it's benefited me tremendously over the years to have people believe in me. Believe me, that's an important factor. So, this is an intangible business. And you only got your songs and you're singing and you're producing and you're out there selling it. You got to make people like it. So I'm grateful to offer any ideas or thoughts I can. And I know Michael and Taxi does an incredible job at that. Very few places you can go like this. That's why I'm here. Yes, we're friends, but we've been friends for a reason.
Right.
And the reason that connected us initially is the music, the idea of helping people, getting ideas out there. I'm just grateful that we did become friends long ago, because it gives me an opportunity to be talking to you right now, truthfully.
The reason that I think I really enjoy you doing the end of the road rally is that I don't want anybody walking out of there thinking that we did the road rally just like First of all, we don't charge for it. It's free. Our convention is absolutely free. Every taxi member gets a ticket for him or herself and for a guest. But I never want anybody to feel like they've come to some commercial enterprise. We don't make any money on the road rally. Last year I lost money on the road rally. There have been other years where the sponsorship dollars didn't equate what we equal what we spent on the road rally. But having you close it out every year with your inspirational message it sends them home going, wow, these guys care, because we do, and you're a great
that's right. You're
example of that.
That's I think it's critical. They've come and spent a day, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Some of them
people
come
fly
from
all over the
away.
world. Yeah.
Far away. Hey guys, we want to make this something that you can remember, that can help you, and I think everybody that's involved in the road rally is trying to do that. So we're all grateful.
Linda Cullum says, I love his closing lines. Clotheslines.
Hey, I put my clothes on the clotheslines, okay? So
I'm just happy when you put your clothes on, period.
Those are you and me both.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys the bio, Michael's bio, because, and this is a edited down version, but Michael Lloyd, Exhibit A, was Vice President of A&R for MGM Records by the age of 20 years old. Most of us can't even get our shoes on the right feet at the age of 20. And for more than 45 years has been producing hit records and soundtracks, earning more than 105 gold and platinum awards and selling over 150 million records. Just some of the artists he's worked with include Barry Manilow, who you're working with right now. We'll talk about that today.
Yep.
Mike Love and the Beach Boys, Lou Rawls, Sylvie Vartan, Shaun Cassidy, Steve Holy, Belinda, Carlisle, the Monkees, one of the greatest groups of all time, by the way. Bellamy Brothers, the Osmonds, Stryper, which I never have understood why they're on this list. It's just not something that I can imagine you doing, but you did it.
Oh, yeah.
Sammy Davis Jr., I can totally believe you would work with him or he would work with you. Bill Medley, the Righteous Brothers, Debby, Boone, Kimberley, Locke, Leif, Garrett, Air Supply, Frank Sinatra, and that's just to name a few.
Sugar Ray.
Sugar
Ray's
Ray.
record comes out soon.
Wow. Oh, that's right. You just worked on that like 6 months ago or something. Remember that?
Comes out soon.
He was also the music supervisor for the film Dirty Dancing, and he wrote the Latin music for Patrick and Jennifer to dance to. I mean...
Here's the white man overbite again.
He also produced the soundtrack for the album, which, I mean, at the time... not even at the time, it was groundbreaking. It was a soundtrack that made everybody else in the industry go, if you have good enough music.
Nobody wanted anything to do with it. No singers,
and
no
how many,
songwriters.
How many did it sell?
55 million.
55 million.
Nobody wanted anything to do with it.
Wow.
It was painful.
Oh, well, you got the last laugh
well,
on that.
Well, it was, one of those things.
Okay, there are currently several Dirty Dancing, the musical companies out there touring all over the world.
Yep.
Michael's also done the scoring, music supervision, songwriting, song placement, and or music producing for nearly 200 motion pictures, TV movies, TV specials, and television series. His chart record spans 6 decades.
That's a scary one.
Yeah, but you started when you were 9.
Still scary.
From the 60s to the present, he's also the recipient of Taxi's Lifetime Achievement
Yay!
Award. Yeah.
It's just so incredibly funny.
It's a great sounding audience, isn't it?
Incredible.
I mean, who wouldn't love that audience?
No, I'm going to take that. I want one of those to take home.
Do you know, these guys have heard it, but I spent an entire Saturday finding this and that thing. Literally went to a dozen stores.
Yeah, no, it's great.
To the point where Toys R Us asked me to leave.
Exactly. It makes it all worthwhile.
And now they're out of business.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, so just a few of the things that I'll be asking Michael that were in the email I sent out. So I'm going to start
Very interesting questions. I'm looking at the computer. Very interesting questions.
So I'm going to start out with some of these, and then we're going to migrate over to the questions that you guys. I can't get used to not looking at the computer there.
Yeah, no, it's really...
I sent these, or yeah, you guys sent these in. Bria kept them and gave them to us, so I will ask Michael those in a moment. So don't get impatient. So first thing I want to ask you, if you had to pick one thing that makes a hit record, what would that be?
Song.
Yay.
Without question. And by the way, that may not be something that a lot of people in the record business say now, because it's about the record sometimes, a lot of times right now. The songs can be a bit more derivative. They're certainly, similar one from another. Even the topics of the songs can be similar one from another. So I think that they really concentrate on the record, the sounds of the record, how interesting is it, what components are really going to attract people to the record. Dick Clark used to have on American Bandstand years ago a rate a record, a little scene in the television show, and he'd play something, and then a guy and a girl would be up there and they'd rate it, and it got to be a cliche. It was something that everybody said, "I'll give it an 80 because I can dance to it." Right.
Prescient.
That hasn't changed much.
No.
So there are those, and there's no disrespect intended to any of that. It's just that when you see Ed Sheeran, when you see Adele, Charlie Puth in some ways too. I mean, he may be a little more contemporary in terms of pop radio, but there are a number of people writing songs, actual songs with melodies and lyrics and stuff like that. And I think the public is not just hungry for it. I think they are absolutely starved for it, because when something comes along that is like that and gets a chance, it's become successful. So the song to me is always important. That's the key to the universe at the beginning.
I've probably told you a story, but I'm going to repeat it because it underscores what you're saying. I think it was my very first day working in the industry. I was vacuuming the carpet in the lobby of Studio C at Criteria Studios in Miami.
Wow.
On the other side of the wall was Rod Stewart doing "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" And in the
he was in the studio recording it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Dwayne Hitchings had just come up with da 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 on the keyboard.
Yeah.
But Tommy Dowd and Arif Martin were producing the record,
Right.
and I didn't know these guys, but I was 19 years old, and I see these two older gentlemen in their mid-50s, and they're playing pinball in the lobby where I'm vacuuming, and they seemed a little annoyed that I was vacuuming, but they looked like they were big time, so I turned off the what?
I'd be annoyed.
Yeah,
but it's okay, whatever.
And they were having a great game, by the way, like killing it, and I'm vacuuming because that's what my boss told me to do.
Yeah.
And I turned off the vacuum, and I said, "Excuse me," very shyly, and they looked at me like, "Idiot, you just interrupted the best game of our lives."
Yeah.
What? I said, "You guys look like you know what you're doing. Can you tell me what it takes to make a hit record?" And I think it was Tommy Dowd said, "On the other side of that wall, we have one of the greatest artists of all time. We've got the best equipment money can rent. We've got the best studio players. We've got the best of everything. But I don't know if we're making a hit record." And then he pointed out a window. There's a warehouse complex about a half mile away that you could see out this big picture window. And he said, "Somewhere in that warehouse is a kid with a TIAC 4-track, and he is making a hit record. Do you know why?" And I said, He said, "Because he's got a hit song." So exactly here we are, 40 years later, hearing the same thing.
A couple of days ago, I spent a long time on the phone with Clive.
Yeah,
and I hadn't talked
Clive
to him
Davis.
for,
He tends to drop names
Sorry.
without the last name
Sorry.
because, Clive Davis.
Sorry. And I hadn't talked to him for a while, and I met him when I was like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that very thing, about songs. And he's doing something with Jennifer Holliday, I think, right now. And he did something with Johnny Mathis fairly recently. But Clive's, of course, legacy and history, everyone knows. But the
definitive
songs,
song man.
Yeah, the songs. And Barry and I have talked about this, and Clive and I have talked about this. I said, you're not a musician, you're not a singer, you're not a songwriter, but I said you can sit there and be the ultimate audience. You somehow have this ability to feel the song. And even if the song on demos, it doesn't mean that, if you heard Mandy, for instance, the first Barry Manilow hit, if you heard the demo of Mandy, first of all, it was called Brandy, and it was up-tempo.
Wow.
So, but he thought the song was a hit. Now, I don't know. I guess obviously there have been people like that, but they're not a lot. And he is probably, I think, the most significant of them all because he's picked it over decades, right?
Even the other great song guys from our industry
not like him.
Would say that Clive is
he's the guy.
Yeah.
So, to him, it's a song, right? I mean, yeah, Whitney's a great artist. Barry's a great artist. And Barry wrote a lot of his songs, too. I mean, let's not forget that. So he's written, Copa and Even Now and Could It Be Magic? I mean, big, giant songs. So that was a slightly different dynamic. Whitney didn't write.
Mm-hmm.
But, Clive is just great at this. And so it's song-based. And there might be some that would disagree. But I believe if you're going to be successful, if you're going to have a more permanent career and a more permanent hit, the song is everything.
Clive is also famous for pairing a song with the right artist, where
Absolutely.
other artists would be begging him for it, and he would say, nope, this one's going to Whitney.
Absolutely.
And he pissed people off by doing that, but he was always right in his decisions. I've never read anything where somebody said, look, he took that song away from me and gave it to Whitney and had a flop with it.
Right.
You're right.
No. He just that's a special guy, and there is not anybody like him. People are successful and they have different strengths,
Yeah.
But his strength was picking songs and realizing it.
He also has a deep understanding. Shouldn't talk like he's not with us, not among us anymore.
No. He does.
A very deep understanding of the whole process too, of all the departments within a label, and that's what made Arista so successful.
Absolutely.
Everything he touches is successful because he understands you got to get the people within the label excited so that they go out, get the public excited.
Absolutely.
Radio
I'm going through that
guys
right now with a new artist. Absolutely, it's just very important. Barry was an exception for him. I mean, Springsteen, back in the days of CBS, of course, the big songwriters and performers, Springsteen, all the various ones we know back then. But Barry was everything. Barry's a songwriter, musician, performer, producer, arranger. I mean, all of these things. I guess there's somebody else like that, but I don't know who it would be.
How is that for you as a producer with somebody like Barry, who's a quintuple threat, as it were?
Yeah, I learn something from him every time I talk to him.
So, does he need you? Obviously, he does because you're there.
I have feared that question for a long time, and I'm grateful and very proud to be working with him because I do learn from him all the time. Actually, I must tell you, I learn from everybody. I learn something from everybody. But Barry and I have known each other for a very long time. I not only respect what he does, I really like what he does. It's just beyond that. And he's a great writer and a conceptualizer of what he does. He just has a natural talent for this, and he always wants to be good. When he goes out on stage in Vegas and stuff, and he's up there right now, every time it's balls to the wall. Yeah. It's just, it's got to be great, it's got to be great. And he films them. Every show he films,
wow,
and then the next day he watches it. Did I do that right? Is this good? Because he respects the audience, and he wants them to have a special time, I don't know. There's not a lot of guys like that.
That's a true performer.
He's a real performer.
So when you guys, your production relationship with him, once you walk into the studio, has to be quite different from other artists that you work with because he brings so much to the party. So you guys found an equilibrium where obviously there's a ton of trust. He trusts you that if you don't have to be fearful of saying anything, and you have to. All producers know that in many cases you're the psychologist for the artist. Sometimes they can get in their own way.
Well, or the sounding board, that kind of thing. So for Barry, on what we're doing right now, we came upon a process where he wrote all these songs, and they're based around 90% of his piano playing, right? So we've got a piano track, really great, and then he'll put a scratch vocal to that, and then we put music on top of that. And it's worked out incredibly well because we've got the guide of the emotion of the piano. Here's a perfect example. many years ago, got to be like 12 years ago now, I was doing a television show that was a summer replacement on ABC. And it was about impersonators, like here's an Elvis guy, here's a Little Richard guy, and so forth, right?
Okay.
And they're competing against each other as to who the best.
I'd love to see anybody impersonate Little Richard, but go ahead.
This guy was unbelievable.
Wow.
So anyway, they had that, and interesting you say that, the producers wanted to have Little Richard come on the final show and be with the impersonator guy. And so I'd known Richard just casually, and now over the years, right? He comes on the show. This is, again, like 12 years ago. And he wasn't in great health. He's a kind of a big guy. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't in great health, but here he is. And he sits down at the piano. This is like in rehearsal or whatever, starting. We're not filming yet. And so I said, Richard, play something. And now I've got a band there, great studio musicians, great guys, right? And he starts to play Good Golly Miss Molly on the piano. And he's got big hands, like basketball player hands. And he plays hard, right? And he starts to play, and in 2 seconds, you understand why rock and roll became a phenomenon.
Wow.
The feel of it is just magical, unbelievable. Just him sitting at the piano playing. All these guys, including me, run to get instruments, right? And to play along with Little Richard, right? As soon as we all started to play, feel is gone.
Wow.
Nobody feels it the same way. Nobody feels it the same way as Little Richard or Chuck Berry.
So how do you make a record with a guy like that?
It doesn't sound the same anymore.
Call Steve Cropper and everybody else leaves the room?
No, it's way before those guys.
Wow.
Because Chuck Berry and Richard developed this thing of, here's a straight eighth, right? Right? Okay, and here's a swing, right? Dotted eighth. They somehow did a little bit in between. And if you listen to Johnny B. Goode by Chuck Berry, and you listen to those Little Richard records of a long time ago, you'll hear it kind of edge towards swing, but edge towards straight. And it's just this swampy feel that these guys had. And I talked to the drummer for Richard, who was like 17 or 18 when he started off with Richard. They were in a train station in, let's say it was Alabama, I'm not sure where, but somewhere like that. They were trying to figure out what they were going to do rhythmic. Wow, what are we going to sound like? What are we going to do? The train pulls in, chugga, 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 and they both look at each other and they say, wow, that's the sound. That's what we want. Now, I don't know how you interpret the chugga, chugga, chugga to what they're playing, but I guess they did.
Yeah.
And it's just a magical thing. So Barry, when he plays, has his feel that honestly nobody else does. And it kind of goes with the song. It just becomes a part of the whole thing. So we thought that this would be important, and it really has been important. This has been an interesting procedure for him and for me, and it's been great because I always want to have Barry in the record, not just a singer. I want to have Barry in the record. And that could be arrangement ideas, that could be him playing, that could be all kinds of things. So anyway, it sounds a little crazy, some of these things, but
Not to me,
each thing is different.
I
they're
worked
individual.
with Neil Young one time for an extended period,
Yeah.
and he was the same way. We would cut everything with him doing guitar vocal. A lot of times him walking around the room with the guitar on, and my assistant following him around with an 87.
Really?
And
Wow.
weeks later he'd say, remember that rainy Tuesday afternoon? Can you pull that up? And he'd go,
Wow.
there's a song in there.
Wow.
And eventually it got 23 pieces overdubbed to his guitar vocals in Nashville.
Oh my!
And that's tough.
Yeah.
But you had the essence of Neil Young, just like you're talking.
And sometimes we're not even doing it to a straight click.
We didn't use a click.
Yeah, no. Barry will play the piano on 2 or 3 of these things, and he plays really good time, but still,
Yeah.
it has a human drift, and then we'll create a click track to that.
Wow.
So it's the technology as far as this goes has just been phenomenal for us, and just interesting. And I don't know that we'll do it always this way, but it works really beautifully.
Sometimes the best production on an artist like that is get out of the way and be there when they need you. When he looks up and says, "How was that take?" and you go, "Not as good as number 3." And he's got to have that trust in you to know to go back to number 3 because that's the keeper.
He has a great head for this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an odd guy. This is a guy that doesn't come along often. Barry Manilow doesn't come along often.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm grateful to be friends and to have a chance to work with him. It's been terrific. I really enjoy it.
So next week, we're all getting invited down to the studio to hang out with Barry.
Exactly.
That'll never happen.
Yeah, we're all going to have lunch. Yeah, man, we'll all come. I know. It'll be great.
What makes an artist desirable to record labels and the public?
Well, gosh, that's a deadly question because now it can be YouTube views, Instagram views and likes and comments. It's frightening because it's so superficial. And you could say, well, the internet has given these people an opportunity to become noticed, which is true. But if that's the only thing they're being noticed for, oh yeah, well, this guy's got 2 million views. Oh, he's got this, he's got that. This girl's got that. Well, what about a great song? What about, do they sound really good? Are they really a good artist? I think the public wants exceptionalism. I think that they're given a lot of nice things that really aren't exceptional, but the technology can make it exceptional.
They come and go. I mean, the audience, the listening public, has always been somewhat fickle. But the level of fickleness now, because everything is so immediate, you fall in love with this artist on your phone while you're sitting on a bus.
And you can learn everything about him in 20 seconds.
But then you grow weary of them quickly because there's so much other stuff and there's no artist development. There's no career development.
There's no career development. It's and you've heard about a couple of these artists. For instance, I think Adele took a long time off, right? Mm-hmm. She might have had a health issue, as I recall, her vocal cords or something, right? Anyway,
I think that sounds right. She also had a kid, didn't she?
Perhaps so. So she had a life. She had a life.
She had a life. There you go.
And but I remember when the Beatles were happening. Now this is 150 years ago, but still, when the Beatles were happening, I remember Johnny Carson had a little blip on the show of tape from Liverpool or wherever they were playing in England, and everybody got a little tease of it because there wasn't any way to see anything, right? There wasn't no internet. There was just television. The news showed.
And there were only 3 channels and PBS.
Right. So I mean, there wasn't much, and you didn't read about it in the newspaper until it got to be undeniable, right? So there was even not just a development from a record label standpoint of view, but there was development in the world, in the public. And then when they finally did break here, well, they had been recording for a while, so there was a lot of material. And it all came out basically at the same time.
And the marketing setup was, well, I remember I saw them on the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, I think it was.
Like in February or something?
Yeah, February of 64.
64, yeah.
The next day I went out and bought a pair of Beatle boots and a Beatle wig. I was a 9-year-old kid. And I showed up at school, and there were a bunch of other kids wearing it. So they already had that stuff in stock in the stores days, if not weeks, before they ever aired on Ed Sullivan.
Undeniable stuff. Yeah. It was just a crazy time. It would be more difficult for that to happen now. You see it for movies. Mm-hmm. If it's a tie-in for the new Toy Story movie or Star Wars or who knows what, right? But it is more difficult for music to have that impact because it was life-altering. It wasn't just music. Presley, the Beatles, in a different way, Motown, because there were R&B artists coming into white radio, in a different way. There was an incredible little copyrighted bit on the back of the Motown albums that was a silhouette of a guy and a girl dancing, and it said, "The music of young America." Mm-hmm. It didn't say the music of young black America, the R&B music of America, the music of young America. And that is what this should all be about. This isn't black music, this isn't country music, this isn't whatever. Radio stations back there played all that stuff, right?
But now marketing caused the segregation of
Yes,
genres,
absolutely.
because they wanted to attract a black audience for black music,
Right.
and a white Southern audience for country music, because the advertisers wanted a concentration
Right.
of their people to buy their products. So they weren't really doing anything wrong, but it did cause segregation amongst what
Well,
radio stations
and-
played.
and
And I
it
don't
got-
mean that in a racial way.
No, it got splintered and splintered, to rap and hip hop and this and grunge metal and that. I mean, it was like,
Right.
crazy. But the fact is that people, I think, doesn't matter what your color is, you want to hear some music.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of country fans that like rap, and I know rap fans that like Sinatra, and so I think the audience is much more eclectic than the record companies, the advertisers give them credit for.
Well, and then you've got the proof on Spotify where people build their own playlists.
That's
and it's
exactly
all the
right.
stuff they love, not what's being
When I go
served
play
to them.
basketball, there's some friends of mine, some black guys that come with radio, little boombox things that now, not boombox, but little Bluetooth things, right? Boy, did I date myself. Anyway,
Only back to the 80s.
Jeez, oh thank God, little boombox things, and they'll play stuff, and some of it's old rap, old hip hop, right?
Yeah.
And I'll ask them what that is, right? Because some of it's just album cuts, right? But it's cool, and it's as cool as anything modern. And in some ways, it's almost more refreshing because people copied that and copied that and copied that. That you got to go back to the source sometimes. But in any event, the whole thing, black music has been tremendously influential in white music. I mean, not just Chuck Berry and Little Richard. The Osmonds were a reflection of the Jackson 5.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at groups like that all the way along, Boys to Men at the time, all kinds of things. So that was the basis of rock and roll, black music and country music,
Yep.
coming together, gospel, all that mixed in. So anyway, I'm very appreciative. And those are the people that I recorded first. Solomon Urk, Lou Rawls,
Wow.
Jimmy Smith, great jazz organist. I was extremely fortunate to record those people and learn from them. It was really great.
And the Solomon Burke record. Whew.
Oh my gosh.
What are some tips that you might have for artists who are producing themselves in home studios? Back in our day, when, you were even younger than I, excuse me, you booked a professional studio, you booked professional players, unless it was a self-contained band, and you brought all these things to bear to make the record. And you, as the producer, were kind of the conductor of the orchestra, if you think of the orchestra.
If there was a producer.
Well, but I'm talking about when there was.
Yeah.
Okay, so producer was responsible for helping the band to find their best self, kind of. You
Right.
know, it's like, what are your best songs? And
Right.
maybe he should be singing that lead vocal instead
be.
of you, or
Yeah.
maybe we need backgrounds on this,
Could
or
be,
guys, let's try it slower. All those little nuances that a really good professional producer can bring to bear on a record.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got this generation of people for the last 10 years that are working in home studios, and they're isolated.
And they do it themselves.
Right, and so they're looking in a mirror, figuratively speaking.
Yeah.
Are there any thoughts you have on what a professional producer used to do in the studio that might be good tips for independent, homebound people working on their own? They're
I'm
isolated.
staring at the ground here thinking about this.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that you need to educate yourself by listening to other things that are successful, not just the 5 things you're trying to emulate.
Mm.
Because everybody at a certain point is reacting to something, right? The trick is to not always react, but to be able to create something from your reaction. So if you hear a song, you don't want to create just the kind of a sideways version of that. Even though that may be successful, you want to try and add something to it that gives you a little bit more identity, let's say. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't go back. Let's say you're doing something, just for argument's sake, let's say it's John Legend, right? Mm-hmm. He certainly is a singer that sings songs, right? And R&B and so forth, R&B pop. Well, who influenced him? Would it have been Boyz II Men? I don't know. Would it have been Marvin Gaye?
If he's smart.
Would it? Well, but he might have grown up hearing some of these things.
Yeah.
Would it have been Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson?
Sam Cooke, one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, going back, and he was Lou was a backup singer for Lou Rawls was a backup singer for Sam Cooke.
You know, I've got to let you guys know, if anybody watches this, Michael Lloyd has told me this probably 5 times in the last 10 years. I think it was Sam Cooke that you, or no.
Did what?
You have said to me, find me a young is it Sam
Nat
Cooke?
King Cole.
Young Nat King Cole.
Yeah, no, it doesn't exist. I mean, it's like crazy. That's another whole
Somewhere
story.
in a church, in a Baptist church in Alabama, that person is out
probably
there.
Probably does. But so go back to Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
If you're interested in John Legend, go back to Sam Cooke and see where some of that originated. It's not to copy Sam Cooke, but you can be influenced by something that is more pure. And remember, in those days, there weren't synthesizers, there weren't click tracks. Nobody did that. They had to go into the studio and play and create it, and be that, and write those songs. Sam wrote a lot of those songs, and I think that idea can be terrific towards helping someone understand how to make their own record. You need a bit of musical history to back up what you're doing. You don't have to, again, you don't want to imitate something that's very old, but there might be something to learn from it, and you can apply that in a modern way to what's happening today. For instance, when you hear Pharrell sing Happy, right? It's a very simple record, and there are so many Motown-ish elements in it that make that song perfect. He's not copying something, but the influences are undeniable. When you listen to Uptown Funk, listen to Ladies' Night, and listen to a couple of those things that happened back then, and you'll hear, oh my gosh, there are similarities. Yet Uptown Funk isn't a copy, and it sounds modern. So the one thing that I think people do today, which is not good, is they think music started 5, 6, 7 years ago. It didn't. It started a long time ago, and the more education you can have in that just gives you more to draw on for today. And obviously you got to learn about the equipment, which is a big deal, right? It's not just, put some echo on. It's what's the echo that's going to enhance this? Well, what am I going to do to make this vocal stand out? How am I going to make it clear, the clarity of the record? Is there just too many things playing? Have I gotten bored with it? And put another synthesizer, put another part on, these are the bells. And is by putting on so much to sound big, have I gotten smaller? Which is many times the case. If you're more open, you create more size because you have more space and you have more areas where you can hear things. Yes, Phil Spector created that wall of sound with 100 musicians, but they had their place.
Right. Every part was so meticulously laid in there.
They had their place. So, but I certainly sympathize with people that are getting this equipment and trying to learn the equipment and trying to become, engineers and producers and technicians and all this kind of stuff. But I encourage you to try and self-educate. There are little things online from different manufacturers that maybe give you ideas about bus limiting and EQ and all this kind of stuff. But listen to some of the old records and see how that might apply to what you're doing.
The good news is now, back in my day, your day, if you wanted a Motown drum sound, you had to think about how they did it. Probably
Right.
in a room with a vinyl floor,
Right.
probably a mono overhead mic and a snare mic and maybe a kick mic on it.
Yep.
Excuse me. And now you can just pull up Motown drums and they will sound pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So there's that.
It's the feel.
Yeah.
It's the feel. You can get some of those drum samples, and I do it too. But it's the feel. But then what I'll do is I'll go in and play drums on real drums on top of that.
Yep. And humanity.
And it can make a huge difference. Now, of course, it depends on the song. If it's an EDM song that's a constant, dance. Well, maybe you don't need, or even maybe that's a bad thing to put real drums on it. But still, on a lot of other records, it would be something appropriate. But the that one microphone thing he's alluding to. So when I go in and record, because I've got a setup of drums that most of the time that I always use.
Hey, by the way, you should know, Michael lives in Beverly Hills on what...
Well, yeah, we won't go into that.
Well, but I won't give anything away. I'll just say he's got
I've got access to a studio. Let's say that's it.
Well, he's got an out studio.
Yeah, I got a studio. So here's a set of drums. Now, sometimes it's 2 toms, sometimes it's 3. So, you can mic the toms on top, which you see a lot of, or you can mic them underneath. It's a whole nother sound because you don't get the attack of the stick in anywhere near the same way. You can take the bottom heads off. It's a whole nother world, right? So that's something to consider. But I'll mic all these things separate. There'll be a lot of mics, right? But over the drums will be a Sony C37.
Oh my goodness, C37P?
No, not a P. C37, the old tube one.
Oh, wow.
And that is the one, if you go online to any of the Wrecking Crew photos, you will see Hal sitting there with a C37
Hal Blaine
above him. Just that mic. And maybe there's a kick drum mic, right? And that's it. That is the sound. And they'd move it around a little bit, depending,
But they
so
also
forth.
had Hal Blaine's touch.
They had,
because if I went out and played that kid, it would sound like crap.
Well, and that's a big deal. But they didn't have. Some of these consoles only had like 14 or 15 inputs. You can't. You're not going to have a lot of microphones. So and there'd be Carol Kay playing bass, and so and so and so and so, and it's another whole world. So I have used that overhead mic sometimes, just that. Even though I have all the others on separate tracks, I've turned those off and just have that overhead with a kick drum. And you can't imagine, all of a sudden it's a different sound. So and some of these things you can emulate with programming as well. I mean, some of these things are pretty comprehensive, and they've got room and they've got a mic here and a mic there, and you can kind of emulate that sound. But whether or not you do that isn't so important. The idea is, how am I going to make this to have a feel? How am I going to make this recording sound interesting to somebody without every bell and whistle that you can get on a virtual instrument? So if you have a good song, now you got to present it well. We talk at Taxi about this all the time, about demos and about this. How can I make my demo sound better? Should it be this? Should it be just a piano and voice? Boy, I'll tell you, today, they're kind of looking to get finished records on stuff. So anything you can do to learn, to educate yourself, as we just said, I would encourage you to look into it. It's tough, but you guys can do it.
While we're on the subject, so it's great song, great performance, which, those are the standards that anybody who's serious about this stuff has lived by for a very long time. Even going back to sessions with a single microphone for the whole room.
Sure.
People understood it was the song and the performance, and the technology was an enhancement to it was a tool to capture the performance in the song. But vocal performances in particular, something that I see getting weaker with every generation. I don't hear that many vocal performances that hold up to the performances of yesteryear, and I'm not just being a grumpy old guy saying but I've been around long enough and been in the control room for enough great vocals that I wanted to ask you how you, in a quiet moment when it's just you and Barry Manilow in the studio, or you and any of the artists that you've worked with in the studio, and you're not feeling the love coming out of the mouth on the vocal, what are some not tactics, but what are some of the techniques?
Technique is a good word. I mean, you really want to tell people to act these lyrics out. They want to be an actor, an actress. What is the lyric saying? Is it fun? Is it sad? Is it love? Is it whatever? How are you going to reach somebody? How are you going to communicate that lyric to somebody? And acting it out is what I say over and over and over. Just listen to the lyric as you're singing it. When you read it, when you see it there, if it says, I want you, that doesn't work. I want you.
I'm moving over.
No disrespect, but I'm just saying.
When you work with Frank Sinatra, who's the king of interpreting lyrics.
Incredible. And to the point of getting like, what? He put the T on the end of stuff and all. I mean, it's just like ridiculous. But the and this is what will happen. This invariably happens. You'll say to somebody, really go crazy on this one. Just, oh, yeah, great. So I can just do anything I want? Yeah, go crazy, because we got another one here. It's really good, but now experiment, right?
Right.
And they'll sing it exactly the same way. And they'll think, I'm going crazy, right? Oh, I've been crazy, right? And then they'll say, how was that? And I will say, well, it's very much like what you just did. Really? I thought I was like outside the box, So when you're singing and when you're doing it, it's very, very different. And you need to be able to communicate the emotion of the song and help that person, if they need it, in terms of delivery. How are you going to deliver that so that you don't sound just like a common person? You want it to sound exceptional in some way. And when you hear Adele and when you hear Ed Sheeran, is just naturally has that thing. He just naturally communicates. Barry Manilow just naturally communicates. Elvis Presley, whoever, right? Some of these people, they just naturally communicate.
Those are exceptional artists.
You want to be exceptional.
So
you want to be as exceptional as you can.
I've seen some of my engineering colleagues turn a vocal recording into a science project. And at a very young age, I understood that they were doing something wrong. They would set up 4 microphones.
Oh, I know, geez.
And they would, do another take. Let's listen to the Sony. Let's listen to the AKG. And they get
they're gone by then.
They get so inside the head of the vocalist that the performance is gone, because they're worrying about how do I sound. They're worrying about their pitch and everything. My theory is shove an 87 in front of them. And
knock yourself out.
Yeah, roll tape.
So for those that don't know this, when Frank would go into the studio,
as in Sinatra,
he would sing once. The orchestra would be there. They do it all at the same time. God forbid there was like a mistake in the orchestra or whatever. But
could you imagine being that guy?
They would rehearse it and so forth
this
before he got
Studio
there,
A, right?
wherever, and they would come in and sing. He did not believe in, okay, well, let's do another one. I think I can do it better. At a certain later stage in his career, he did do some different things, but that was more of an aberration. And Dean and Sammy and those guys all took the same page out of his book. So when Sammy came in and sang, it was kind of like one time. Candyman was kind of one time. That was it. And he didn't even, can we get a little vocal level here? He didn't even do that. You had to get the vocal level and everything. He wasn't being arbitrary. It was just that he wanted to give a performance, right?
Oh, and they were all performers,
and that's
too.
And they were performers, and they were used to that. Dean Martin didn't go to any of the rehearsals for his television show. He had no idea what was going on. He would just show up when they taped it. So he had a bit where someone would come through a door, like knock on the door, and he never knew who was going to be there. So when he reacted, that was a genuine reaction.
Nice.
So now these guys are exaggerated, bigger than life things, but they came out of a time when you had to get up in front of an audience with very little PA or mic or anything, and you somehow had to deliver. And that's what they grew up with. That's what they were educated to, and their talent allowed them to do that. When the Beatles played at the Hollywood Bowl, I have the tape of that I sold, by the way, to the Beatles.
Wow. And
they are on stage, screaming girls. There's only a couple of mics on the drums, guitar, bass, right? 5 mics, 2 singing mics. So let's say 7 mics. There were no monitors because you heard yourself, supposedly, through the PA at the Hollywood Bowl.
Really? They had no wedges on the floor?
They
Nothing.
didn't exist then.
Wow.
So you listened to yourself out of the PA.
Yeah.
That's how you heard yourself. Well, not for them, because the screaming was unbelievable. And the screaming is so loud, it's coming into these mics which are on stage. There's no audience mics,
right,
picking this up. They're just coming into these mics. These guys played spot on. They played the same exact licks as the record. It's incredible. But now getting back to your kind of question about this, why don't they sing better now and all this? Well, these guys were in Hamburg at a club playing 6 hours a day or something, rock and roll songs, Chuck Berry, Elvis, Motown, whatever they were playing, cover songs, over and over and over. That was their education. That was their school. So they had to learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They just happened to be unbelievably talented as well. I mean, 4 guys together that were just, off the
Yeah,
charts.
it's meant to be, and,
Yeah.
and you're right. They got their performance chops up because they got live feedback from the audience. They knew
Exactly.
how to connect with the audience and what worked for the audience.
And yes, it was a long time ago, but if people could go out and perform now, which doesn't happen as much, the club scene is all very different than it was, that would be educational. That would be a wonderful opportunity. That's what I did. I went and played in my band. We played all the time. And when we were 12 and 13.
Did you grew up in Southern California, right?
Yeah,
you
we were
weren't born here,
band.
but you grew up
No,
here.
surf band. Yeah, we had a surf band when I was 12. So, that kind of thing is just irreplaceable. And people don't get enough chances for that, right? And when they go into the studio, they think, well, that's kind of it. Now, if they have a hit record, well, they get out on stage. If they're not very compelling, maybe they just haven't had enough time to learn how to be compelling, right? Lady Gaga, was pretty compelling, right? But if you look at her stuff before she was Lady Gaga,
Yeah.
it's a different kind of person. She thought, obviously, somehow, somebody thought, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to present myself, I'm going to get separated from the pack, right? But she's one of those, she's a very good singer. So she's
I think
one of
she's
those.
the best female singer in the world, right? In the pop world, right?
She's
now.
really good.
At
She's
the end of
really good.
Monsters Ball, when the credits are rolling, the end credits are rolling, they show footage from backstage with her warming up with her background vocalist.
Oh, yeah.
Makes the hair in your arm. I remember,
No,
I was not a Lady Gaga fan until I saw Monsters Ball, and then when I saw that sealed the deal, because anybody who's ever worked in a studio and
really good.
had to get a great vocal performance out of an artist, I looked at that and said, okay, that's one of those artists where you light a candle, turn down the lights, and just roll tape and say, go for it.
That's right. No, she's a throwback artist.
Yeah.
In many ways. So, and when you think about her breadth of work product, from the dance stuff of Lady Gaga up to Stars Born, Lady Gaga, or Tony Bennett, or something like that.
That stuff she did with Tony Bennett was freaking amazing.
But that's a wide range of stuff. Very few people can do that, navigate through that, and be genuine, right? Well, she can, and she's a rare talent. So
she is.
But she, she also knows how to perform. So that came from somewhere, So it's but those kind of things you got to work at. That's the other thing, guys. Don't take it for granted that you're just going to be successful somehow. Work at this stuff. Work at this. Spend time learning, listening to other people. How do I get better? How do I get better?
Let's talk about this. You and I have talked ad nauseum about this over the years. You and I and Shirelli have talked about this. Rob Shirelli, the three of us and our wives go out to dinner a few times a year.
We let Rob come, basically.
That's right. And one of the things we've talked about, not so much anymore because I think we've worn the subject out, is entitlement. People think just because I want it, I'm owed it.
Yeah.
And you've been around the block long enough and have worked with a wide enough range of real artists to see that I'm guessing virtually all of them earned it.
I mean, Barry, talk about earning it, and the Beach Boys, talk about earning it. Oh my gosh, they just, or the Osmonds. The Osmonds, were on the Andy Williams show. They did Barbershop. They worked and worked and worked at that. And they were ridiculously good. They were just great. They could do anything. Dance, sing, tell jokes, whatever.
Yeah, they're performers.
I went to see Donnie Marie. I hadn't seen them in a long time. Like, I hadn't seen them live. I bet you 40 or 50 years.
Wow.
Right? And the last time was the television show, probably. But they're up in Vegas, and they're just unreal on stage. They were born to do this. They literally were born to be this way, because the Johnny and they on the Dandy Williams was a tiny little baby.
Yeah.
And they've done this all their lives, and on stage they're just great. So again, the opportunity for these things doesn't exist so much now, and it has been a kind of an entitlement thing. I want to be successful. I've got the equipment. I like hip hop. I like country. So here I go. And that's not coming from a great place, because you can be easily disappointed. And there's no reason to come from that place. It's, I like these kind of artists. I want to do what they're doing. I'm going to work my ass off to get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different mindset. So it requires a lot of work, a lot of effort, and there's bumps in the road, and sometimes it's smooth, right? But you got to jump over the bumps, and you got to make it smooth.
Yeah.
And any business is tough. People say, "Oh, the record business is much tougher now." It's always tough.
Yeah.
It's all these things. Is making this table is tough. Get over it, right? Just get out there and do your best.
Let's take some of the questions that the audience sent us before the show.
Okay.
When producing an album, how do you choose which song should be the single?
It's the best one. The best one. It's kind of a consensus that comes up. Everybody says, "Oh my gosh, that's the single."
Yeah.
Right. And I must tell you, if that doesn't happen, you may not have a single. So, in today's world, it's much more single oriented. It's like it was in the 60s, the 50s, single records. So people go into the studio, they're not looking for an album cut. Oh, this would be great on the album. Well, okay. What you want is a hit. So you're looking for singles. And the more you have, the better off you are. So it starts right at the beginning. What's the hit?
This question's a little complex, but I think
and then save it for somebody that's smarter than me.
I think he can handle it. Mark Himley asks, when working
Hey, Mark.
When working with an artist, how do you handle the payment? Assuming you are creating all of the music and doing all of the production work, and the artist is handling lyrics and vocals, it sounds to me like you're in a band together there.
Yeah.
Do you solely charge a producer fee? So got to remember that you're creating the music and the track, and the artist is doing lyrics and the vocal. So do you solely charge a production fee and let the artist keep 100% of the back end? Do you split the back end 50-50 with no upfront producer fee, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, it sounds like you're actually doing something that's work for hire stuff for someone coming in.
Yeah.
So if some artist is just coming in and you charge them $50 an hour for a studio and to record it and blah blah blah, you're really just a for hire setup, and that may be all it is.
Sorry. If I didn't do that, Bray kicks me under the table. Okay.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
It's really funny. If, on the other hand, it's an artist that you're working with in a producer-artist way, you're not going to. She's not going to necessarily. You're not going to necessarily be paying you. Maybe you're a team, or as Michael just said, you're in the same band or something. So you're kind of all for one and one for all. In which case, your goal is to either make something you all can sell yourself, or you're going to want to get it with a record company or something, and the producer's going to get X and the artist is going to get Y. It's split up however, whether it's 50-50 or not, or 90-10 or something else. That's up to you guys in deciding all that. But you're not really paying the artist, right? There's kind of two ways. They're either hiring you to kind of fulfill a function, as if you're going to go get your car fixed, or you're working on something that's going to be more long-term, and we're trying to be a partnership here. We're trying to be a team, right? And you're going to try and get a deal or sell it yourself or something, and then you guys have to make up some sort of arrangement between the two of you, whether it's a band and you or a single artist and you. You got to make that up. So, these are more complex questions. That isn't a complete answer, but it's a partially complete answer.
It's also it gets even more complicated when the artist works with 4 or 5 or 6 different producers on different songs for the record.
Right.
Then is it Most Favored Nations, where everybody gets the same deal? Or let's say that...
That's a successful artist, generally.
Yeah. Big successful artist. But let's say that you're working with bringing in Pharrell, and Pharrell comes in with the beat, and he ends up collaborating with you on this, and you come up with the top line.
Right.
And Pharrell produces. That's a tough question,
all those things become. There's no rule for any of that. They're all in a state of flux, and you do need to try to understand that it is a state of flux, and you've got to define your relationship. So, and you're right.
Great
So,
point.
some of it could be, everybody's the same, favored nation. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's not. It also depends on what you're bringing to the table. So if you're just creating beats, nothing more, well then that's X. If you're creating beats and you've got lyric ideas, okay, that's more. If you're creating beats, lyric ideas, and you have an understanding of engineering, right, and you're recording a lot of that at your house, and then he's taking that and adding to it, well, now that's something again different. The technology and the way of modern recording has confused this.
Yeah.
And given many, many opportunities for people to argue. So I did that. I created. What do you mean? So it's, I think, important to try and define your relationship as close to the beginning as possible, so there aren't any disagreements, and that doesn't cloud the whole issue, creating problems. Because what you want is a path to success, particularly if it's with somebody that's having some success.
And then there's the star factor. If you're you yourself are a star, but you're bringing Pharrell on to do a track, that's going to have more weight and may be considered for a single faster than a lesser known producer.
Right.
So Pharrell may be able to cut a deal. His manager is going to cut a deal for him on that record because he brings something to it.
Absolutely.
That without him, you wouldn't have necessarily.
Absolutely. And that's why it's there is no rule, and the road can be crooked, and there could be many paths. I know we haven't answered this perfectly, but think back to what we said at the beginning, which is you might be performing a service for somebody that's coming in and basically renting your place, and you're kind of helping them make the record. And you are work for hire. You have no ownership in it, nothing. When they walk out the door with it, see ya, that's it. And if they sell 1 million records, they sell 1 million records. You don't have anything to do with it. The other side of that is you do.
Yeah.
And it's everything in between. And the everything in between is what your arrangement is with that artist.
And, some of those rules existed back in our day.
Right.
Because you would be working on a record. A typical production deal was 2 or 3 points on the gross retail sales. Probably 50 to 100K up front on a full album.
If it's a record company?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. But that's if a record company has hired you.
Right.
Different story.
But
that can happen today too.
But then you, as the producer, you're brought on as a craftsperson, a tradesperson almost, to help get the best performance and what have you from that artist. But 2/3 of the way through the record, one night you're hanging out with the artist late in the studio and you guys come up with a song together. Now you're a co-writer.
Right.
And that artist is co-producing with you on that because you both had the idea and developed it together.
Could be.
So things started to change back around the mid to late 70s. I started seeing stuff like that happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
There were 2 producers, Russ Titleman and Lenny Warren.
Yeah, at Warner Brothers.
Yeah, those guys brought a lot of that stuff to records, you know. Yes, I'm producing the Doobie Brothers, but I'm also doing X on the record, So
Right. No, it's
there's no easy cut.
And I'll produce them and mix them and all this kind of stuff. So it just kind of depends. It just kind of depends on how you proceed, right? And we're not trying to sidestep it, but it is a complicated issue.
Reginald Estelle asks, if I write a song for a known artist, would I usually get paid something up front for my time, or do
No.
I just get my publishing split?
You get publishing and writing.
And you wouldn't be doing a split right off the bat unless the artist said,
Right.
I will only cut this if you cut me in as a co-writer.
Right.
And they usually won't say it like that.
No,
They'll say,
no. I think it should be and instead of but.
Right. Now
Right
I'm a co-writer.
now we got a song.
I think we're in the room on the same day for that one.
Oh, yeah.
Further, as a new songwriter, I am seeing the artists/labels have their own production teams. This goes back to what we were just talking about.
Right.
I guess partially so they can keep all the royalties.
Yeah, they don't really. The artist may work with someone more often than someone else, or they may work like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. They did all the Janet Jackson stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they did it because that was the team.
Right.
They were the producer. She was the artist. They got along. George Martin produced the Beatle records. Brian Wilson produced the Beach Boy records. So on and so forth. And there are opportunities for sometimes 10 cuts, 10 different producers. Yeah, sorry, click, click. Yeah, I know. I know it's a problem. So,
He was clicking the ballpoint pen, so I gave him a pencil.
It's a bad thing. I'm just going to tap this mother. So, anyway, sometimes there could be an album with 10 cuts and 10 different producers.
Yeah.
My leanings are towards a team. So, if these 2 or 3 people here are the producers and here's the artist and they're having success, I want that team to stay together. I want that team to be the 80s Lakers. I want that team to be the Golden State Warriors. I want them to get along. I want them to keep that train moving. Now, the other side of that is I need to grow.
Right. So,
right.
Bree and I were talking about this the other day, the sophomore record.
Yes.
Now do you bring the same team back?
Yeah.
Because you could be stuck right where you were.
I mean, I think you keep the same team going until it's apparent that it's not working. But I really do. I think you keep the same team going on and on. There are going to be people that disagree with me. Oh, that's not what's happening today. It's old-fashioned. Okay. I get a lot of influence from sports, and I see Belichick and Tom Brady together. I want to keep them together. They somehow know how to win. And until it's proven they can't, which there's been moments up and down, but to the credit of the whole Patriots organization, they kept them together. And look what happened, right? It's like unbelievable. So I understand the yin and yang of this whole thing, but I kind of like the idea of people rooting for each other, or they're all in the same boat and they're all focused on being successful. You don't want to just do the same record over and over and over. I get it. But why would you think they're going to do the same record over and over? Look at Holland, Dozier and Holland and Motown, hit after hit after hit with all these different artists. I don't know. Seems pretty good to me.
Boy, look, you just made me flash on Lamont Dozier on stage at the Road Rally.
Great guy.
That was so special for me personally. That was just one of those moments where I went, man, I love what I do for a living.
Yeah. No, I'm with
Marion
you.
Laird asks, of all the songs you've either written and or produced for film or TV, so records, film, TV, all that stuff, any one in particular stand out in your mind as your favorite, and if so, why?
No, I've been asked that question over and over and over. I've heard other people ask the same question. To tell you the truth, I like them all. And I like the ones that weren't successful because they're like children. I know this sounds really trite, but I like them all. And I'm grateful to have a chance to do any of them, one of them, 10 of them, anything. So there isn't anything that stands out as being my favorite. There are some that stand out as being perhaps more successful than others, but I like them all. Did I like working with Lou Rawls when I was 20? Absolutely. And if I had the chance to do it again, and if he were here right now, I'd give him a hug and want to do it now. There isn't a favorite. Not a favorite artist, not a favorite song. There are artists that are my dear friends, Barry, Shaun, Mike and the Beach Boys, obviously. But they're all important.
How about a favorite moment in the studio where something was going in the dumper and you had a flash of an idea and rescued something that turned around and became a big hit?
Well, when you used to record on tape, many times you'd have a session, and in that session you had enough money to get the musicians and so forth for. But there was this other thing that you had that had no money and no budget, and no one cared about it. Mm-hmm. And so what you do is you'd stick it on the end of the session, right? It was like a famous, everybody did this. So I'm recording an artist, and we've got another 12 minutes or something. I had no money for Shaun Cassidy. And I had an Eric Carmen song called That's Rock and Roll. And the drummer, I said, look, I had a little chord chart, right? And they didn't really have any time to run it down or anything. So I said to the drummer, look, could you I'll play like a rhythm guitar, just a scratch rhythm guitar so you hear how it goes, and look at the chord chart, and can you just play like kind of kick and snare, maybe a fill here and there? Yeah, sure. So we sat there and did that, and then he left. And then I just played the instruments on top of that, but I had the basis of the drum. I probably would have played the drum if I had no choice, but he's a good drummer, better than me, and it was good for him to do it. So that's how we got that record done at the end of a session, #1 record. 2 million singles, a huge thing for Shaun. For Leif, same thing happened. At the end of a Leif Garrett session, we were doing cover songs.
Mm-hmm.
I had written a little kind of disco song, and we had no time.
It's all right. You can still be my friend.
Yeah, thank you. And we had no time, and I played the piano, and the guys followed the chord chart, and it was his biggest hit. So that happened more then.
Mm-hmm.
Now that doesn't happen as much because you're not hiring musicians necessarily to come in and
Studio
play
time
anymore.
is essentially free. Yeah.
For a lot of people. So it doesn't happen the same way. But those were cool moments because something good came out of a last second. Oh, let's just squeeze it on.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't just happen to me. It's a cliche in the music business. So it happened all the time.
The other things that got put on session bills as food were, as tape, I mean. Fancy dinners delivered to the studio, showed up as reels of 2-inch tape, and drug budgets I frequently saw getting billed as rolls of 2-inch tape.
Really?
Yeah.
We didn't have any drug budgets. We didn't have any food budgets.
I worked in Miami.
We had very small budgets.
I worked in Miami in the 70s. I think the drug budget was the top line item.
Yeah, well, that could be. No,
Cases.
that was one thing that was important for me, and for Mike Curb. We, didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't.
You've
do
never
drugs.
been a partier.
Well, we would have fun and party, but I think that I was I wanted to be in charge,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to have something going on in my life that made it perhaps not in charge or out of control or in some way. And
This
I
is
saw
why
a lot of
you've
friends.
had a career this long,
Well,
and some people haven't.
But I've seen some people back then, what happened with them, and was not attracted to that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So God watched over me, I'll tell you, because I was protected coming through that time. Any number of things could have happened, and I'm very grateful that I never got into that.
Please ask Michael Lloyd. This is from Rashid Laney. I hope I got that name right. Sorry if I didn't. Hi, Michael. Please ask Michael Lloyd advice he can give me with respect to submitting a song I specifically wrote for an established artist to sing, in this case, Demi Lovato. So this gentleman wants to know, I wrote a song for Demi Lovato. How do I get it to her?
No one is going to take your song cold. The legalities of that, while they may be hazy, has become a reality. And you send something in to the record company, they're just going to put it, if it was a cassette in the old days, they just put it in a box and eventually throw it all away. So, and that happens today too. What I would recommend is if you could consider this, and maybe at the next rally, there's going to be people there like this. You get involved with perhaps an attorney that kind of specializes in new songwriters, new artists. There's 2 or 3 that have been at the
That are
taxi.
still left?
Yeah, and they need to entree that for you into some place. Now that doesn't mean you necessarily have to pay the money. Maybe if they get it, they would get a little piece or a little something. You'd have to negotiate what that is, but you're going to need some help there. Attorneys can be effective in that. Maybe there are people that are placement people. The guy in Nashville that's so cool.
Song plugger?
Yeah. He was out here a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
But he would do that because it's not
Yeah.
bluegrass and it's not country, which are his bailiwick.
Right, but if it were the version of
Yeah.
Demi Lovato out here, they're chicks with hits, and those people in Nashville do
I
a
can't
lot of
believe
this.
you know them.
Yeah.
I always felt outnumbered when it's a group of publishers,
Yeah.
like 6 ladies that get
Right,
together, and
yeah.
on a Wednesday afternoon at 4:00, you go have a glass of wine, some cheese and crackers,
Yeah.
and you play
Very
them your
effective,
stuff.
Very effective, and they play it for other people.
Yeah.
But or a publisher, obviously, would be someone that could be effective for that, but you got to get with the publisher. So it is challenging. Oh, I've written the perfect song for Demi Lovato. It is challenging to get it to that point where it can be judged. But if you think of some of these things, and another way to do it, ASCAP or BMI, they've got seminars and stuff, and Songwriters of LA or whatever it's called.
LA Songwriter Showcase, which is no longer in existence.
Oh, it's not? Okay. No. John Verhaney?
Yeah, it kind of...
When he passed away,
it kind of died a couple of years before
and you may not be in LA, you may be somewhere else, and there may be a Songwriters Association where you are.
Taxi.
There's a place called Taxi, and they happen to specialize in this stuff. So you want someone pitching your stuff, and Taxi is a perfect example too.
I should point out, and obviously I did that for humorous effect, but here's the difference in what... When I started Taxi, I saw all these people that were out there, can you get my song to so-and-so? And I would tell them the same exact thing that you're telling these guys. Everybody thinks they've got a hit, and the people in the industry who can be that liaison have heard that 1,000 times this week. So here's another person standing in front of them with a cassette, figuratively speaking, in their hand, saying, can you get this to Demi Lovato? The chances of you ever getting in front of that person are extremely slim. Again, you have to do the work. You have to do the homework.
Right.
You've got to earn your way into that seat on the other side of their desk, and then you better have the goods before they're going to lift a finger to help you. I thought, doesn't it make more sense, and I learned this as a shoe salesman at 14 years old, if a woman walked into the store and asked for a 7.5B beige potassoir to wear to a wedding where she's a bridesmaid, you certainly wouldn't bring her a man's Bass-Weejan 9.5D in Cordovan.
And if I had any idea what you just said, I would agree.
You don't bring a lady's shoe for a man or a man's shoe for a woman. Okay, you bring them what they're looking for.
That's a little discriminatory, but okay.
But you bring them what they're looking for. So I thought, why not put, and no pun intended, why not put the shoe on the other foot and reverse the process? All you people out there that are looking for something specific, why don't you tell us, then we tell our members, and our members pitch it, but it's got to go through a filter, because if it goes unfiltered...
And that used to be the old days, like the Brill Building.
Right.
And so those kind of things existed then, much more difficult now. Taxi, would be one of the only places like that. So,
boy, wouldn't it give a fingertip to spend a week in the Brill Building?
Oh, gee whiz. So, but anyway, I certainly understand the feeling and the frustration of trying to get a song that you feel is great to somebody. What you might also think is, okay, it's great for Demi Lovato. I heard this girl singing at a wedding. I heard this girl singing at a bar. She was really good, I thought. And, she doesn't sound like Demi Lovato, but she sounds really good. I wonder if she should cut it. And I can get so-and-so who has a studio at his house. Maybe we could make a record. I'll tell you, things like this happen, and all of a sudden, your primary directive isn't the success. It's the secondary directive. And you found this girl who all of a sudden now becomes bigger than Demi Lovato, right? And I'm not saying this is easy either, but there's no reason for this to be a brick wall. And as Michael has said, you got to work at this, and you got to work at the ideas. Creative ideas will be an incredible help.
And what you're talking about right there is artist development. And this is how people get A&R jobs. This is how people become big-time producers. The same exact scenario you just described is how people become big managers. It's bringing together disparate elements that are going to ignite a fire.
Yep.
And you put them inside that shoebox, pour some lighter fluid on them, and light the match. 90% of the time, 95% of the time, there's going to be no fire. But for the 5 or 10% of the time there is, people in the industry will recognize that. The act will get signed, the song will get sung, and you will come out the other end with some power and some money.
That's right.
It really is.
And leads you further.
Yeah.
This isn't just
a song getting cut.
This is getting a song getting cut and having some success of whatever level it is, or getting a placement in a movie, or a TV show, whatever that is something to talk about, and that is something that, whatever level you're on, will take you presumably then to a little bit higher level, right?
James Haggerty asked a question. I think we just answered.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. What?
Why does this keep moving?
Because people are adding stuff at the bottom. They're constantly typing stuff in.
Oh, I see.
So it's moving
Oh,
in
and
real
they're
time
talking,
with us.
and they're talking amongst themselves.
They do that.
Look at that.
They're probably talking about what they're drinking or having for dinner. They've been
Yeah.
known to do
Thank
that.
you so much, you too. Hi, Bob. Hi. Say something, Bob. Can you see me now, Sarah? No, I can't see you at all. We're all talking. Just bring me something I can use. We love dirty laundry. Okay. And you too. Okay. And
We've
you.
only got a few
Okay.
minutes left, so
Holy moly. Ha ha. Hi, Michael and Michael. That's from Jay. Hi, Jay. Hi, Michael. DW. Okay. Keep those cards and letters coming in, folks. We really like it here at Taxi TV.
James Haggerty asked a question that I think's been asked and answered in that last answer, which was, what advice do you have for a rookie songwriter whose goal is to provide songs to established recording artists as opposed to writing for sync?
You got to meet them, and you probably got to split songwriting with them. That's a rule. So I have some friends that somehow met Bruno Mars, and I used to play basketball with them, very talented guys, and they told me they were working with Bruno Mars. I said, oh, that's great. Time goes by. This is like a year and a half ago now. And they call me one day and say, are you a voting member of the Grammys? I said, yeah. And they said, well, our record is up. I said, what record is that? And it's the Bruno Mars record. And I said, oh, my gosh, that's fantastic. So I voted for their record and blah, 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 and it won. Well, I didn't get into the detail of it, but there are 8 writers on it, which is, as you saw, I'm sure, this past Grammys, 8 is a small number, right? I mean, there could be 9, 10 writers on it. It's hard to imagine how that works out. But just imagine this. Let's say there are 8. Even if you split it just 8 ways, what you would be making on that song is not a lot.
And then if each of the writers has a publisher, now you're making 1/16.
So it would be, much less. And that's assuming that it's split equally. There is nothing to say that it's split equally. Maybe somebody has 25% of the song and you have 1/16, right? So I think, though, that to get started and to get a credit, because that credit can be very, very valuable, as we just said, you got to try and meet these people. And by meeting them, you got to go to events. You got to show up at things. You got to, that event there, everybody there is just like me. Okay, well, but maybe you've got a song that's not like everybody else. Maybe you're going to meet somebody at that event that's speaking that you get along with and that you impress in some way, and it's not like everybody else. So this is the work part of it, right? This is the work part of it,
yeah.
And you got to be willing to put in that kind of effort, and then you may meet somebody and write with them, and then you get started. But placements, don't turn away from placements, because placements can give you a foundation. If you're on some television show and then you're at an event like this and you say to somebody, hi, I'm Tony, I just had a song on Grey's Anatomy. Oh, that gives you validation. Everybody's looking for that. So it sounds superficial and all that, but it's important. People want to get a feeling that someone's
And it used
successful.
to be they might laugh that you had a song on Grey's
Yeah,
Anatomy.
not now.
Not anymore.
Not now.
Now they wish they had a song on Grey's
That's exactly
Anatomy.
right. That's exactly
I've got to
right.
say, there are times where the little devilish part of my brain, we've all got the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other.
I heard you had a devil on both sides. Is
Maybe.
that wrong? Okay.
Possibly.
I saw it. I didn't
But I remember in the early days of Taxi, people in the industry say, oh, they're just good at film and TV.
Yeah, right.
They literally turn their nose up at us.
Yeah.
And now some of those very people who said that back then
Or desperate to do it.
have ended up being A&R people for Taxi, sitting out in
Oh,
the
how
screening
funny.
room. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
My, how things come around.
Yeah.
Steve McCarl asks, I can't wait to hear your answer for this. I am terrible at recording music, but have hundreds of songs I want to share with the world. How do I get my material out there without spending a lot of money in recording studios or countless hours fighting with my computer and my less than professional recording skills?
He's faced with a terrible dilemma.
Yes.
Yeah. Either you're going to have to get better, or you're going to have to find someone to work with. And neither is bad, and neither is perfect. It's up to you to make it perfect. There's a guy that I met years ago at Taxi that's Catnip Pat.
At the road rally. Catnip Pat, I remember him.
Okay.
He's a great guy.
Great guy. And he asked me various questions about the recording because they didn't sound good.
Yeah.
The recordings were not good. And over the years, he got this, he got that, he learned how to do this, he learned how to do that. They're incredible sounding.
Wow.
It's amazing. I talked to him just before the road rally here because I've kept in touch with him. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. I mean, he's into Melodyne, he's into all these things, and everything sounds really good. Really good.
So his desire was strong enough that it made him willing to put in.
Yep, to learn. And maybe his son helps with stuff. I'm not quite sure, don't quite remember. But the point is that yes, this is difficult. The technology allows you to have these songs, but you got to learn how to handle the technology. You don't have to have, $100,000 worth of equipment. What you have to have is enough equipment that you know how to use and that you know how to use properly. The Beatles, Beach Boys, they're in the studio. They didn't have any of these things. They didn't have technology.
It's
they had
easier
to make it
now than ever.
Yeah, they had to create out of thin air. So just get what you can, but learn how to use it. And I'm sorry, it is the part of it. Or find someone that you are compatible with and you guys understand each other and can create something together. And if you've got stuff that you feel you need to get out there, get it out there the best you can. Even if it's just you sitting and playing guitar or playing piano or whatever it happens to be. But present it the best that you can. And no excuses.
And do a lot of it, because with
Yes,
every
do a lot of
failure,
it.
you will get better.
Absolutely, absolutely. What is it that Edison said when he finally invented a light bulb? He said, they said, oh my gosh, you spent so many times failing. He says, nope, it took me 500 times to learn how to not make a light bulb,
Yeah.
right? So you got to stick with it and really concentrate on it. It's part of this whole thing.
If it were easy and there was a shortcut, everybody would be a hit songwriter, everybody would be a hit record producer. It's like learning to do graphics on a computer. You can't
No.
I would love to direct a Hollywood blockbuster, but you can't just desire it and will it to happen you can will it to happen if the will causes you to learn and do the work.
Right.
But you have to learn about CGI, you have to learn about shots, you have to learn about pulling the best
Story,
performance out of an actor, story, right, all that stuff. It's a craft.
Yep. And this is too.
Yeah, anything that's a craft is learned by constant attempts, constant failures, and you know what? You've got the greatest community in the world, being your fellow members at Taxi. Between the forum, we tell our members, hang out in the forum, go to the road rally.
I said that when they were upstairs at the little theater, someone was looking...
At the road rally.
Yeah, at the road rally. Someone was looking... I'm going to make this up now because I'm not sure. Someone was a lyricist.
Right.
And they were looking for a music writer. And I said, turn around.
Yeah.
Look at the guy behind you. Look at the girl in the corner over here. I mean, talk to each other. Don't just think like, oh, no one's going to talk to me. Oh, I need someone big. What are you talking about? What you need is a collaborator. You can become big together. The sum of your parts may be much, much greater than the two of you individually. At a certain point, Lennon and McCartney were nothing. They did cover songs. All of a sudden, they became arguably the biggest pop songwriters in history. So, you can't always think, if I could only meet Bruno Mars, I'd be successful. That's not good thinking. It's not positive thinking. It doesn't help you. Sure, if you meet him and it works out, terrific. If it doesn't, does that mean it's over? Of course not. So what you have to do is you have to find ways for you to get yourself expressed better. And that may be a co-writer, that may be a co-producer, that may be any number of different things. And that gets back to what I said earlier about the team. All of this is a team. I never think of this stuff as, oh, my record. I think of it as our record. I have musicians, engineers, songwriters, promotion people, all kinds of different things. Artists, of course, all kinds of different things. It's our record. So if you incorporate that thinking a bit into what you're trying to achieve, you may find some companions along the way that become very, very important to you and become team members, and you all work together to help make each other successful. I hope that makes some sense without sounding too preachy, but
Makes
that's
perfect
the
sense.
idea.
Look, so many of our most successful taxi members are people that came to the road rally having that very thought that this gentleman asked, and they realized exactly what you said once they hit the ground at the road rally. And even people who are not really that sociable and not good at meeting other people find so much commonality.
Yeah, because they do. They have something.
Yeah. It's like family.
Absolutely.
And that's not a cliche at the road rally. And they end up somebody who's strong with recording and production meets
Right.
somebody who's got a great voice and
Right.
writes great melody and lyrics.
Right.
And they become a thing. And that's where our six-figure members have come from in many cases.
I think that it may be hard to absorb right now in this an hour we're talking, and you'd like to hear someone talk to you directly for 10 hours about this. But the fact is that simply what Michael is saying and what I'm trying to say is that this is very important stuff, that if it resonates with you, interpret it the way that it's best for you. But this is what happens with people. This is how they become successful. And sure, you could always say that, well, so-and-so did it all on his own. Okay, well, maybe from the surface we see that.
Right, that's what made it into the media.
Yeah, but the fact is that there were other people involved along the way. So think about it. Think about it.
Let's go back to Whitney Houston, Clive Davis for a minute. People wish they could just meet a Clive Davis who would wave his magic wand to make it all happen. But in so many cases, and I can't say this was necessarily the case with Whitney, although she did pay her dues singing in church and the church choir, but in many cases, people that get to meet a Clive Davis, a magician, if you will, that can magically make things happen for a career, they had to earn their way.
Absolutely.
It's not like they're sitting at home going, oh, I wrote one great song, and Clive Davis magically appears at the foot of their bed in the middle of the night and goes, I hear you have a great song. Can I hear? Oh, that's amazing. Let me get it to so-and-so.
Right.
There you go. I have bestowed upon you your license to be a hit songwriter.
Right.
Doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that.
You want to take a couple minutes and give a little inspiration, kind of like you do at the road rally? I didn't prep him for this, so you got to do it off the cuff.
How long do we have?
Frankly, our dinner reservation's not till 6:15, so you got a while. We're at 5:30.
Oh, so we're okay.
5:32.
Okay,
yeah.
so we're going to go eat dinner after this, and
Shirley's going to be late anyway.
Yeah,
we know that.
yeah. So it's no big deal.
Sorry, Rob.
But the important thing is that this is my first time coming out to the taxi offices. Right? After all this time, I've never come out to the taxi offices. And all the way out here, I was thinking about it and thinking about how important it has been to me over the years, not to just meet Michael, Lord knows, but the opportunity to meet you. That's been the thing that's been killer for me. And I say this all the time, and I think that people don't believe it. Anytime I can sit and talk to you guys about this and hear your dreams and hear your thoughts and hear these questions, right, and try to answer them, and I stress try to answer them because I don't know it all. I'm learning something every day, and I learn from you all. I learn all the time. I used to have a music teacher, a theory harmony music teacher, that had been successful in television and film, and, not incredibly, but some, and a very talented man, but a great teacher. And I'd see him every week, and he'd play me stuff, and I'd want to hear more about the business actually than what he was teaching me for theory and harmony. And I said, "Why do you teach?" And he said, "Well, first of all, I love doing it, and secondly, I learn something every time I talk to somebody and I try to teach them something." I said, "How's that possible?" He said, "Well, I verbalize things, and I'm telling them things that I believe that would help them. And, it resonates back to me and makes more an impression on me as I'm talking about it." And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." And I've never forgotten that. So when I'm talking to somebody that is, trying to get started and all that, I love hearing what they have to say. They may say something to me that is totally unexpected, that I'm not thinking about it in that way, and I've learned something. I've learned something about a song, a lyric, a sound, who knows what, life. And I think that the biggest thing that I enjoy in November is going to see the people at Taxi. The biggest thing in my life, as Michael knows, is that I had a health issue that was, unbelievable in November too. So November's a very special month for me.
Not this past November, many
years ago. And I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to still be going to Taxi. So I encourage you all to, if there's anything I can tell you or you can take away from this, is A, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. If this is something you can only devote 2 hours a day to because you got a day job or a night job or whatever, a family, responsibilities, fine. You spend whatever quality time you can on this. 2, don't let other people tell you can't do it. That's horrible negative influence that nobody wants that, nobody needs it, it's not true. That's the most important thing. Number 3, concentrate on being importantly good. Really work at it. It's important for you to be good, not just the technology. 4, learn everything you can, not just today, but what happened to leading to today. Respect the past, appreciate today, look forward to tomorrow. And 5, be grateful for the opportunity that you have to be immersed in music. Music is a communicator that has been for all eternity. It touches people's souls and emotions. Michael and Taxi have given me the chance to talk to you guys. I consider that a blessing. And it goes along with the music. So appreciate the music, respect the audience, respect what you're doing. And I'll see you in November, God willing, at the Road Rally.
Thanks, Michael. Words to live by, and I'm really, really glad that we finally got you out here for a show.
Bye, guys. Good to see you. No, I didn't see you. I didn't even hear you talk, but it's good to hear your questions and see all the things going by on the computer.
We will see you guys next week.
Okay, get the applause. Okay,
let's get another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live.
Oh no, you guys stop! Don't applaud so much. No, nothing. No, really, that's too much.
See you guys. Bye bye.